Hello, and welcome. In today's deep dive, we explore the intricate web of security, secrecy, and paranoia that surrounds one of the world's most powerful figures. This is a story that stretches far beyond the gilded halls of the Kremlin, into a world of identical offices, digital detective work, and the pervasive fear of a leader who has spent decades cultivating an image of unshakable strength. We will examine the extraordinary lengths to which Vladimir Putin is reportedly going to conceal his whereabouts, a strategy born from a KGB mindset and amplified by the modern realities of warfare. This is not just a story about security measures. It's a look into the psychological state of a leader who, according to investigators and defectors, is increasingly consumed by the fear that his enemies are closing in. The public persona of Russia's president is one the world has come to know intimately. It is an image of control, of unbending will, a strongman at the helm of a vast nation. This image, meticulously crafted over more than 2 decades, has been a cornerstone of his rule. Yet, behind this carefully constructed facade, a different narrative has taken shape. It is a story of deep-seated paranoia, a trait that seems to have been forged during his formative years in the KGB and has now, reports suggest, blossomed into an all-consuming obsession. It seems you can take the man out of the KGB, but you can't take the KGB out of the man. And right now, this mindset has reportedly driven him to make some truly extraordinary moves that extend beyond mere self-preservation into the realm of elaborate deception. At the heart of this growing fear is one specific threat: Ukrainian drones with the range and sophistication to reach the very heart of Russia, to reach Moscow itself. The fear, it is said, is that death could come from the sky, delivered by an unmanned aerial vehicle zeroing in for the kill. In response to this perceived threat, Putin has devised a remarkably convoluted solution. According to a report by United 24 Media on November 12th, this solution involves a series of offices created across Russia. On its own, this would hardly be newsworthy. World leaders require secure facilities in various locations to ensure continuity of government and rapid response capabilities. But these are no ordinary offices. The defining characteristic of Putin's multiple situation rooms is their striking similarity. They are, for all intents and purposes, identical. The purpose of this mimicry is chillingly simple: to ensure that nobody, from foreign intelligence agencies to his own citizens, ever knows his true location at any given time. This discovery was brought to light by the investigative outlet Sistema, which collaborated with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and Current Time. Their investigation revealed that these duplicate offices, informally dubbed beige rooms, are designed to exacting and identical standards. The layout, the wall, paneling, the furniture, even the desk accessories are replicated with painstaking precision. To an uninformed observer viewing official footage, a meeting in one office would be indistinguishable from a meeting in another. This is precisely the intention. Official photographs and videos released by the Kremlin are meant to create the illusion that Russia's leader is always operating from his primary office, a symbol of stability and control. The reality, as investigators found, is that he is constantly on the move. Based on Sistema's findings, at any given moment, Putin could be in an office in Sochi, the southern resort city on the Black Sea; in Valdai, a secluded residence nestled in the forests halfway between Moscow and St. Petersburg; or at his official residence in Novo-Ogaryovo, just outside the capital. Official images offer no clues as to which it is. This is by design. The level of detail in this deception is astonishing. Reports suggest that even the number of pencils on the desk is kept consistent. So, if the mimicry is so perfect, how did investigators ever uncover the truth? The answer lies in thousands of hours of painstaking digital detective work. The team at Sistema embarked on a monumental task. They analyzed hundreds of official publications and government reports involving Putin and his offices spanning the last decade. They scrutinized dozens of hours of footage from state-controlled television, including the program Moscow, Kremlin, Putin. With this vast archive of images and videos compiled, they began looking for needles in a haystack. The investigation also delved into official government procurement documents and building plans, searching for evidence of contracts for identically designed offices. They cross-referenced this with the travel records of Russian state media journalists, allowing them to piece together where reporters were being sent to cover the president's activities. It was through this detailed, multi-layered examination that inconsistencies began to emerge. The original office, the template upon which the others are based, is located at the Novo-Ogaryovo residence. This is where the Kremlin claims Putin is whenever they release footage of him at work in his supposed main office. However, the first major clue that something was amiss dates back to December of 2020. In a segment for Moscow Kremlin, Putin, the host, Pavel Zarubin, stood outside what was presented as the Novo-Ogaryovo office. Tugging on the door handle, Zarubin declared, "It's reasonable to assume that a significant portion of the preparation for the press conference took place in this very room." The next shot shows Putin himself, supposedly moments later, tugging at the very same handle. The location stamp for both clips reads, Novo-Ogaryovo. The clear intention of the state-run program was to create the impression that the reporter and the president were in the same building at the same time. However, the very object the program chose to focus on, the door handle, became the key that unlocked the deception. As Current Time noted in its report on the Sistema discovery, a close examination reveals that Putin and Zarubin are opening two different, though remarkably similar doors. On one, the handle is positioned slightly higher. On the other, it is slightly lower. This single discrepancy was the first thread. The investigators discovered that the door handle, in what was later identified as Putin's Sochi office, aligns perfectly with the line of the slab joints on the adjacent wall. In the Novo-Ogaryovo office, the handle is positioned noticeably below this line. Another subtle clue was a seam on the wall behind Putin, which was visibly lower than the same seam in the office from which Zarubin was reporting. The list of giveaways grew. The television stands in the two offices had different legs. The number of ventilation holes in the furniture varied. Even the writing pads on the desks were different. All of these details, viewable in photographs shared by the investigative outlets, built an irrefutable case. Putin wasn't just using one office. He had at least one identical replica, and he was using it to mislead the world about his location. These discrepancies appeared regularly throughout the 700 reports that Sistema analyzed. In one report, a minor renovation or change in the office decor would be visible, only for a subsequent report, published days later, to show the office back in its original state, or with a different renovation altogether. The illusion of a single static location was being shattered by these small but significant errors. In fact, an outlet named Proct had even reported on the duplicate offices back in 2020. The Kremlin's response at the time was a furious denial, labeling the claims an information attack. Such a strong reaction, rather than a simple dismissal, only served to reinforce the idea that the existence of these clone offices was a secret Putin desperately wanted to keep. Then, there was the third office. Located at his Valdai residence, this is the office where Putin held meetings related to the tragic Winter Cherry shopping mall fire in March of 2018. That fire in Siberia claimed at least 64 lives, 41 of whom were children, and it triggered a wave of national grief and anger. Perhaps it was the fear of public backlash that led Putin to use the Valdai duplicate instead of his main office. But how could investigators be sure this wasn't the same replica office discovered in Sochi? Again, the answer lay in the details. Sistema's analysis revealed further differences that set the Valdai location apart from the other two. A seam running across the wall behind the main table in the Valdai office is a touch higher than the same seam in both the Novo-Ogaryovo and Sochi locations. Furthermore, a thermostat switch is located in the center of a panel near the door at Valdai. In the other two offices, that same switch is placed off-center, toward the panel's bottom left corner. There were also subtle differences in the color and finish of the tables across all three locations. The Valdai office, however, shared one feature with the Sochi replica, the slightly higher door handle, which distinguished them both from the Novo-Ogaryovo original. The evidence was overwhelming. The Kremlin could deny it, but the visual record proved that Putin was operating a network of near-identical offices across Russia. And these three are just the ones for which investigators have found concrete proof. United 24 Media claims that Putin's penchant for performative office shenanigans began around 2014, the same year Russia annexed Crimea. However, the deception reportedly intensified dramatically during the COVID-19 pandemic. During this period, Putin wanted to project an image of a leader responsibly isolating himself at his Novo-Ogaryovo residence. But the footage examined by Sistema revealed this was often not the case. He was, more likely, in Sochi or Valdai, far from the capital. So, to the long list of accusations against him, one could add breaking his own quarantine restrictions. The use of these fake offices has become so ingrained in Kremlin procedure that it is now a matter of state process. The investigation concludes that the use of cloned offices and false location reporting has become an institutionalized practice. This system, Sistema argues, now shapes state logistics and protocol, all built around maintaining the personal security and psychological comfort of the Russian leader. Since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Putin's reliance on this network of hideouts has reportedly become even more pronounced. His psychological comfort is now paramount. And for further confirmation, one can turn to a man who was once on the inside, Gleb Karakulov. In a report by Pamphletti on September 13th, details from an interview with Karakulov came to light. Once a high-ranking captain in Putin's elite personal security service, the FSO, the 35-year-old engineer defected when the invasion of Ukraine began. Given his role, Karakulov would have been attached to Putin's hip, providing secure communications on his many trips. His position gave him unparalleled insight into the Russian leader's paranoid playbook. Karakulov confirmed the existence of Putin's identical offices, describing them as a key component in a web of security systems designed to prevent an assassination. He also revealed details that the journalistic investigation had overlooked or deemed irrelevant. For instance, Putin keeps all of his duplicate offices as sparsely furnished as possible to minimize the risk of discovery through inconsistent details. Each office is equipped with 10 perfectly sharpened pencils, placed neatly next to a computer screen and keyboard. Each has 3 white telephones on Putin's desk, all stationed to his left, along with a microphone for secure conversations. And, most tellingly, there are no windows in any of the 3 identified offices. A view to the outside would be an instant giveaway, a clear reference point that would betray the office's true location. Karakulov recounted his own experiences with the deception. "There were times when I knew he was in Sochi," he stated. "The TV and the news showed him leading a meeting in Novo-Ogaryovo. So I asked a colleague in Sochi, 'Has he left already?' 'No,' he said, 'he's still here.'" Karakulov concluded, "I think this is an attempt to confuse, firstly, foreign intelligence, and secondly, so that there are no assassination attempts." The misdirection goes even further. Putin's security officials reportedly fly decoy planes or dispatch presidential convoys to destinations that Putin has no intention of visiting, all to create noise and confusion. But as clever as the plan may seem, it is the small, arguably avoidable mistakes that have given the game away. As for why Putin is going to such extraordinary lengths, Karakulov's comments point directly to a profound fear of assassination and foreign espionage. The war in Ukraine, however, has added a new and potent dimension to this fear. It is this reason that reportedly led him to make 29 of his 30 public appearances between January and September of 2025 at his Valdai clone office, rather than the office he is supposed to be working from in Novo-Ogaryovo. And it is also the reason why that Valdai office is reportedly surrounded by 14 air defense systems, including 13 Pantsir missile systems. Putin is terrified of Ukraine's drones, and he has every reason to be. According to United 24 Media, one of the primary reasons for his preference for the Valdai clone office is its location. It is surrounded by dense forests. It is far easier to conceal advanced air defense systems among the trees than it is to hide them in the urban and suburban sprawl that surrounds the Novo-Ogaryovo original. Valdai has become one of Russia's most heavily fortified sites, specifically because Putin knows that Ukraine possesses long-range drones capable of evading air defenses, especially if the positions of those defenses are known. This means that the leader of Russia is effectively hiding out at a residence situated roughly halfway between Moscow and St. Petersburg, rather than working in his country's capital city, like practically all other world leaders do. Putin is aware that Ukraine would welcome the opportunity to target him with a drone, and he knows they have the technology to do it. The country's FP-1 long-range drone alone has a reported range of 1,600 kilometers, according to a May 2025 report by Militarnyi. That range, equivalent to about 994 miles, is more than enough to place the Novo-Ogaryovo office at significant risk. The urban setting of that office also means he cannot easily hide the air defenses that might shoot down incoming drones, making the position even more vulnerable. Ukraine has placed Moscow under drone siege several times since developing its long-range capabilities. The most recent of these sieges, towards the end of October, saw drones sent into Moscow on 3 consecutive nights, forcing the closure of airports and sending a clear message to Putin that he would never be safe if he stayed in the nation's capital. While Ukraine used these drones to target military and industrial assets, as reported by The Guardian on October 29th, it is almost certain that some of those drones would have targeted Putin himself if he had not run away from Russia's most important city. Beyond tricking Ukraine, Putin's fake offices also appear to be an attempt to fool his own people. As far as the average Russian citizen learns from state television, Putin works tirelessly from his Novo-Ogaryovo office. That is his supposed seat of power, and the constant refrain from state TV that this is where he is could be designed to lend a sense of security to a population he is trying to control. The subtext is clear. Your president is hard at work, and he is in the same office in which he always operates because he isn't afraid of Ukraine. It is, by all accounts, a complete lie. But propagating that lie feeds into the Kremlin's broader effort to convince its own people that Ukraine's constant drone strikes in Russian territory aren't as dangerous as they truly are. If Putin is unafraid, the logic goes, then the Russian people shouldn't be afraid either, and if those people aren't scared, they have no reason to call on Putin to end his brutal invasion. Still, it is fear that seems to inform every security decision Putin makes. And the duplicate offices are just a hint of his paranoia. There are many others, some of which predate the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Karakulov, the former FSO officer, claims that Putin always travels without a device that many of us now consider essential. CBC reports the Russian defector as claiming, "I have never seen him with a mobile phone. All the information he receives is only from people close to him. That is, he lives in a kind of information vacuum." That vacuum cannot be helpful for a leader trying to understand what is truly happening in his own country or on the battlefields of Ukraine. Surrounding himself with lackeys who will only tell him what he wants to hear is likely leading to Putin falling further out of touch with reality. Other signs of Putin's paranoia are more bombastic than even a series of near-identical offices. In October of 2024, The Independent reported that Putin had made the strange decision to demolish his Bocharov-Rushe mansion, a sprawling estate in Sochi overlooking the Black Sea. Once one of his favored vacation destinations, the mansion had apparently become a no-go zone for Putin once Ukraine ramped up its drone and missile strikes against Russia's Black Sea fleet. Seemingly fearing for his life, Putin had his beloved palace bulldozed to the ground, presumably to prevent Ukraine from targeting it and scoring a major propaganda victory. Before that demolition, which appears to have happened sometime around May of 2024, Putin had not visited the holiday home for 7 months. This was a man who once spent, on average, 37 days per year at the mansion, often in the company of his reported secret lover, Alina Kabayeva. Now, the mansion is razed. It seems Putin decided it was better to destroy it himself than to allow Ukraine the satisfaction of filming one of its drones taking it out. Some of his security measures make more practical sense. Pamphletti reveals that Putin has been wearing bulletproof vests for every one of his public appearances since at least 2023, based on a report by the Moscow Times. That measure was taken on the recommendation of his presidential security service, and it is a logical precaution for a man who appears to believe that everyone is out to get him. The Moscow Times also revealed in the summer of 2024 that Putin's personal security service has been significantly ramped up since Ukraine gained the ability to strike Moscow. The Kremlin takes Vladimir Putin's security very seriously. He is protected by a whole army of visible and invisible guards, one unnamed official told the outlet. Again, all of this makes sense. It certainly seems more practical than creating fake offices and destroying beloved holiday homes. However, the reports of his security measures take a sharp turn back toward the bizarre. Amidst these other accounts, a particularly strange story emerged about a certain type of suitcase he took to his August meeting with former U.S. President Donald Trump in Alaska, a so-called poop briefcase. Several outlets reported on this, though it must be noted that many were tabloids rather than respected news organizations. The Economic Times summed up the story in an August 18th report, claiming that Putin has his security detail collect and store his excrement in highly guarded suitcases. The purpose, according to these reports, is to prevent foreign powers from using his waste to analyze his DNA and determine what, if any, physical ailments he might have. The same outlet says that reporters from the French magazine Paris Match claim that Putin has had this system in place as far back as his 2017 visit to France. He also reportedly uses a portable toilet rather than on-site facilities during his foreign visits, again out of fear that someone somewhere might learn something about him from his waste. This last security measure, given the nature of the sources, should be taken with a grain of salt. However, taken together, everything we've discussed paints a vivid picture. It is a portrait of a leader so terrified of the consequences of his own actions that he will do anything he can think of to avoid them. For all the power he wields, the revelation of his secret clone offices shows us a man who lives every day of his life in fear. And perhaps he should. Because if he stays in one place for too long, Ukraine's drones may come to meet him. As this paranoia consumes him, Putin must also grapple with something he likely never expected. He is running out of time. His attritional strategy is showing cracks, and the pressure from the international community is mounting. The deadline for a Russian victory, once seen as inevitable in the Kremlin, is drawing ever nearer. This combination of external pressure and internal fear has created a volatile and unpredictable situation, with a paranoid leader at its very center. The story of the beige rooms is more than just a curiosity. It is a window into the state of mind of the man who started Europe's largest conflict since the Second World War,